We're gonna get to some self-care in a moment, but first, what can I tell you? Some of you like your coffee. I like my smoothies. Hey guys, what's going on? It's Meshi with Path to Wellness with Meshi. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. So if you've ever felt overworked, overwhelmed, stressed out to the nines, and you really wanted to just manage self-care a little bit better, then this video is definitely going to be for you. I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 tips of how to really prioritize self-care without spending money, and I think you're going to love it here. But first, if you are brand new here, then consider subscribing. We usually chat here about 3 times a week, and we talk about zero waste, about green beauty, and about anxiety management and how you can really live a more consciously driven life. So if that sounds good to you, then just consider subscribing. But in the meanwhile, let's not waste any more time and let's get right into this. When we're talking about anxiety and overwhelm and self-care seems to be such a big buzzword around the street. And I feel like it comes around certain times of the year more than others. Specifically in January, everybody wants to talk about self-care and how you should take care of yourself, how you should prioritize. You can tell when you go to certain retailers, you can pretty much tell that the entire stores are flooded with all of those ideas and things that you can do, like start yoga or start to meditate. Here's a yoga blog, here's an app, whatever. I think that self-care needs to be, I'm highlighting this today more specifically because as we're entering into the summer, and if you're a parent, you're probably going to be finding yourself a little bit more flustered than any other time of the year, because really it kind of throws your schedule off just a little bit. You know what I mean? And it can feel like you don't have a structured schedule. It can feel like you need to manage your life, but then you also need to manage your children's lives just a little bit more, pay attention to them a little bit more. And then all of a sudden, we haven't really prioritized ourselves. So I thought that since we are now in the thick of it with the summer months, we would really just spend a moment to talk about it. So my number one tip for you is to create boundaries. Whether that means that you're saying no more, or you're just creating a healthy boundary around what it is that you really want, and not really letting anything or anyone really affect that. That would be a really nice way to actually prioritize you. You really need to spend some more time on not really budging on the things that lift you up. Because if you do, then it's going to compromise how you feel, which means that it's going to change the state that you're going to be in, which also means that you're more likely to get to a point where you're burning out and you become more resentful. And then by that point, you're not really presenting the version of you to people that you really could be. So create boundaries with people, create boundaries with your work, create boundaries of how much you're bringing your work home. If that's your issue, create boundaries with friendships, with your children, create boundaries, and it will really protect the things that are sacred for you. Number two is to say yes. Say yes to you first before you say yes to anything else. And this can feel like the most selfish thing that you've done. And I can relate because I always start to say yes about halfway through as I'm starting to become more resentful. Saying yes to you could mean that you wake up a little bit earlier and do the things that really light you up. Saying yes could also mean that you say yes to getting a couple of the things that will make you tick, or you say yes to the events or to the vacations or to the outing or the hobby that you know changes your state. Those are the things that we're really looking for, the things that light your fire, that you find exciting, that puts a big smile on your face. Because the more you do that, the more you're filling up your own cup, which means that the less you're going to be worried about burnout, about being resentful, and about being bitter, and about just being over scheduled and overstressed. Number 3 is to build in downtime. This one is such a struggle for me still today, and I need a constant reminder to build in the downtime as much as I need to schedule in the things that are important to me. I'm very good with scheduling in the things that are priorities, but I always have a really tough time, and I'm learning, by the way, to just make it so that it's not a rigid list, but schedule in times when I can rest, schedule in times when I can recharge. And if I don't, I find this is especially true over the weekends, when it feels like, okay, well, this is your time to do the chores, this is your time to go and, run your errands, and this is the time for you to spend some time with your children. This is the time it almost feels like, I don't know if you guys relate to this, but it almost feels like the moment that the weekend arrives, it's sort of like you're trying to cram everything into that 1 or 2 days of your weekend, instead of just being like, no, I'm not going to be able to get all of that done and still have time and energy. Sometimes it's not so much the time. Like we always talk about, it's the time. No, sometimes it's actually having the mental and physical energy for you to do the things that you actually wanted to do. So my suggestion is to prioritize that first, because then everything else can kind of follow. And honestly, when you prioritize the things that are important to you, whether that's a bike ride or going to the gym or doing dress up with your children, like whatever it is, it kind of doesn't matter. What matters is that you prioritize that thing first before you do anything else, because then that way you put you first, and that's so big. Like if you're looking for a really good recommendation when it comes to that, one of the books that have helped me a lot, especially if you're an empath, Christian Northup has a book called Dodging Energy Vampires. And it's all about creating sacred boundaries, and it's all about prioritizing you first and how you can kind of navigate yourself through things so that you don't burn out, because it's so important to you as an empath. Number four is take time for gratitude. Sometimes we tend to really focus on the things that are not going so well, especially when we can tap into that negative spiral, and then that becomes sort of like the overwhelm story that we're living in. That's how it is for me. Whenever I'm at a lower vibration, whenever I'm feeling overworked or just not seeing progress, or I'm just getting really frustrated, it can be very easy for me to continue that mental cycle of negative messaging that continuously comes and says, this is never going to get better, this is hard, how many more things do you want to put on my plate, I'm getting overwhelmed. You already know the story. So to take the time to be grateful for the things that are already in my life. So sometimes we don't take the time to really examine what's already in our lives and how that actually contributes to our happiness. And then there's just so much to be grateful for. There's so much that we have access to, so many opportunities that it's under our fingertips, yet sometimes we kind of lose sight of that. And I am definitely guilty of that. So taking the time to be grateful for the things that are already surrounds us, the things that we already have access to, is so very important, because then you take the time to take in the positive experiences, to take in the good. If you have heard the book from Rick Hansen, I will just post the image of it here, but it was actually the book that he had on Buddhist traditions, and then how that can actually, living in a Buddhist mind, I believe. He talks about how you have to take in the good, and he talks about a gratitude practice, but he doesn't talk about a gratitude practice in your traditional sense where you just sort of write down what you're grateful for. He takes it one step further, when in a slow meditation, you actually take in those positive experiences, those positive emotions, and then you allow that, you give it about 15 to 20 seconds, anything over about 10 seconds of allowing that positive emotion to truly sink in. Then you're allowing that to sort of cultivate, and then you're giving it enough time in your mind to actually go into the long-term memory. So he's amazing. He connects Buddhist traditions and the teachings of the Buddha with neuroscience, so that way you understand how to apply it to your everyday life and really work with those practices so that they become very tangible. I will leave the link in the description so you can take a look at the book. I think that it's one of those things where, like, the more you understand how your mind works, and then the more you're able to, I think that once we have a level of understanding of, why would we do a gratitude practice? Why would we do compassion? Why would we want to be more empathetic? Why would we want to prioritize ourselves first? Once you understand sort of why you would want to do those things, then it's a lot easier to apply it. At least it is for me. Number 5, which is my last tip for you, is surround you with people, with virtual people, whether it's in person or virtually, with people that are matching your vibrational level, and they can lift you up when you're feeling down. This is so important. And I used to think of like support or like people that surround me as in they need to be physically here in my space in order for me to feel like they have an effect on me. Truth is, you watching this has an effect on you already, because I'm sharing that time and that space with you right now. So whether you're listening to an audiobook, a podcast, you're reaching out to a friend and you're talking to them, you're allowing that energetic exchange to take place, which means that if you're feeling low, if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling like you're ready to burst, that's sort of when you have the opportunity to either start listening to music, or you reach out, or you spend time with your pets. Pets are excellent for that. Or you change your state by managing the incoming information that's coming in. So you might find that you end up listening to a podcast that just changes the information that's coming in, which interrupts the negative thought patterns that are going through your head. And that's so important. And it's also important that you don't spend time on beating yourself up for having the thoughts, beating yourself up for feeling the way that you do, but rather just celebrate yourself for having the level of awareness that you want to help you first. And that comes with a lot of self-compassion. So if you can learn to become your own best friend and really take the time to be grateful for the things you have, to surround you with the people that really lift you up and really want to celebrate you and be there for you and cheer you on, those things are huge. I would love to hear from you guys. This is all I want to share with you. I would love to hear from you guys. Let me know some of your tips of how you manage burnout, how you prioritize self-care, because I'm pretty sure that yours will be a little bit different than mine. And in the meanwhile, if you are brand new here, well, thank you so much for taking the time to stick with me, to connect with me. I feel like my bangs are weird today. Whatever. So thank you so much for not fixing my hair. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate this. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, you can give me a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you get notified every time I release a new video. We usually chat here a few times a week. We chat about anxiety management, about how to live a more consciously driven life that really looks amazing from the inside out and really feels fulfilling. So if that sounds good to you, then you're going to love it here in this community. And in the meanwhile, I will see you guys again in my next video, and just keep seeking you guys. Bye.